So we're pleased to have you tonight here at our Penn Delco School District Town Hall Q&A. The purpose of tonight's kind of get-together opportunity is to answer some questions about our shift to hybrid learning and a shift to possible all virtual learning for some students whose parents may feel they're just not quite comfortable sending them back to school at this time. I am going to pause this a couple minutes because I'm hearing that some people are saying that there's some issues with links that we've posted. So anytime we have these Zoom links, it's always important to take that link out and not hit it directly. Sometimes that takes you to Outlook, but instead to cut and paste it right into your browser. And for some reason, that's an issue with our network and it gets you right to our Zoom link. But we're also going to record tonight's presentation and be able to post that if people still have questions, or let your friends know if they weren't able to attend. We're happy to try and answer questions for you tonight to the best degree that we can. So let me go through a presentation. Right now, everybody should be able to see my PowerPoint screen. Is that coming through, Mr. Gorniak? Mr. Kameka? Great. Okay. Let me also share with you who we have joining with us tonight. Able group of experts. I have Mr. Kameka, our Assistant Superintendent. Has been doing terrific work, working with our administrators, work with our teachers, has been toiling away for the last 6 months to really put together the best possible instructional plan in cooperation with our teachers and our staff and our administrators as we possibly can. He's been doing a superb job, and I'm happy to have him as our Assistant Superintendent. But this is Mr. Brian Dottie. He is our Director of Facilities. He's been with the district for a while now as well. Another person who has not had much time off in the last 5-6 months because of all the work that we've had to do, making sure our facilities are prepared to meet the expectations of teaching during COVID-19, to be able to implement the social distancing requirements. And we're going to do that. We're going to be there, thanks to the facility staff crew and thanks to the expertise that we have from Mr. Dottie. And the screen below him, at least on my screen, is Mr. Gorniak. He's our manager of blended and virtual learning. Mr. Gorniak has been with the district for a number of years. Some of you may have had him as a teacher maybe 10 years ago. And he's worked his way up because of his skill set and his passion and interest in virtual learning. He's really been the Schoology Gorniak, as we've been calling him, the Schoology expert, and has been a great go-to guy for us. Miss Danielle Murray is with us. She is a Penn Delco grad herself, teacher here as well, and we were happy to have her as supervisor of elementary curriculum instruction. And then we also have Dr. Mark Thomas with us, who is our Director of Technology. So I have a number of folks joining with me tonight. When we get to the point where we try to answer some of your questions, I will just read them through and direct them to one of the experts that I have joining us here tonight. We'll probably be close to about 300 participants. So clearly there was some value in having this kind of Q&A, this town hall as a follow-up. Let me get through a few things. First of all, I think tonight, before we even get to Q&A, I might be able to answer some of the questions just kind of based on emails that I have received, where there's just not some clarity that really needs to be put in there. I'd be happy to try to address those things first. This is, as you've seen this look before, this is our pathways to reopening. And I'm very excited that we are closer to getting students back in school. So close, in fact, that actually today was a very joyful day for me personally, because I was able to visit a classroom and see students in a classroom working with great teachers, working with great support staff, working with great principals. We're just really doing superb work. On the first day back, after almost 7 months of not having students in our classroom, and classrooms are not built to be empty. But we had some of our special needs students back in the building today, and they were practicing the protocols, and our teachers were responding as we expect them to respond. And it was a great first day for that group. And next Monday, we will open up under a hybrid model for K-2. The following Thursday, we're going to have our 6th graders back under a hybrid model. And then on the 12th, on that Monday, we will have all grades in place under a hybrid model for those who will be coming to school on Monday, Thursday, then Tuesday, Friday, and the next one Wednesday, which we will answer a little bit today. Our agenda, kind of a plan and a purpose for discussion. I've talked about that a little bit. The scope of the task at hand, I really want to address that just so all parents understand the challenge of what our staff have been trying to accomplish and trying to do in this unprecedented situation. I had to write in here, well done staff, because I can't take credit for this. It's the work that our administrators have done, our principals, our teachers, our support staff, our office staff. I mean, everybody's been going 110% to try to make the best of a not ideal situation whatsoever. And we'll continue to do that. We'll get better every day. And when we see problems and we see mistakes, we'll own up to them. We'll make adjustments and we'll try to make it better the following day. I'm going to offer about five key clarifications, issues that we have identified as emails come in or principals have been fielding those questions, try to address those right out of the gate. There'll be a Q&A period for our panelists. Then we'll talk about what's next. My caveat, and I put this in all of our board meetings, things have changed so quickly of what we're doing right now. I always have to point out that really, although the trends have been more favorable, the plans always remain tied to our ability to control and the spread of the virus in the community. And as of last week, based on the information that was released on Friday, our positivity rates in the geographical boundary of Penn Delco have gotten better, better than the 4-week moving average, and the number of cases declined. Now that could change by the week, right? But right now, knock on wood, in our region, the metrics have been much more favorable than some of the experts anticipated. So people are doing what they need to do, and we're going to rely on the community to follow the rules and help us stop the spread of the virus. Also, virtual and hybrid learning, this is new for everybody. So understanding, patience, and extra effort are required now more than ever. I had this in my slide deck last week at the board meeting. It was worth mentioning again. I could tell you that despite some technical bumps, really the virtual start has gone very well. Again, thanks to our staff who have stepped up, and we promised that it would be different from last spring, and it is clearly different from last spring. Chromebooks have been huge. We knew there was a problem with families of multiple kids having only maybe 1 or 2 devices in the house. So thank you to the school board for ensuring that every kid in our district has access to a Chromebook. Issues with Zoom or Google Meet, there's still a little bit of a learning curve there. First week where there were more concerns. Obviously last spring there were a lot more concerns, even with Zoom itself and the Schoology platform. All of that has gotten better, and it continues to get better. And again, our staff have been stellar. Let me start just by telling you, frankly, because I always try to be completely super honest with the constituents in Penn Delco and with our parents. Our challenge, the challenge for any school district, any school leader, any school board, any teacher this year is very unique. We are trying to satisfy so many different opinions and different requests. And that's what we all want to do, right? We are public servants. And in our district, at least, my expectation is that anybody who works for Penn Delco will do what they can to try to satisfy requests of parents. We don't always succeed, right? But our goal is generally to try to help as best we can so that your kid has a great experience. But this year it's different because it's not just a couple different requests that might be outliers. They are fundamentally opposed to one another. So here's some examples of some emails I've had over the last weekend. It makes no sense that students aren't in school 5 days a week by now. I can understand that sentiment. I understand why a parent would say that position. Someone else wrote, I'm appalled that you would even think of bringing students back to school at all at this time. I can understand that sentiment. Another person wrote, virtual learning is terrible for my child. It's not working for him even a little bit. I know it's good intentions, but it's way too much. It's too much screen time. It's too much everything. I can understand why somebody might feel that way. I can understand that perspective. Another parent wrote, the bottom line, there's not enough virtual teaching happening. My child needs more direct teaching online. She's falling behind. She needs more, right? Not less. So that is the challenge and the quandary that we have in making our decisions about the instructional program, is that we have parents who all have the right reasons to support their positions and their requests, but our program oftentimes is not so flexible that it's designed to provide a personalized program for all 3,400 of our students in Penn Delco. So we're trying to find the happiest medium that meets the different perspectives that we are getting, all of which are valid, but many of which really compete with one another in terms of delivery of services. And Penn Delco is no different than any of the districts in our region and frankly, across the country. Here's just that means Google the challenges of virtual and hybrid learning. And there are thousands of news stories with districts trying to get a handle on virtual learning and hybrid learning and what the best model is. And I have weekly conversations with superintendents in the county. We all are facing the same struggles. Some of our ambitions that we had in mind during the summer, as we've gotten into the fall, have become a bit more realistic. So school districts in other parts of the country, other parts of the state that have already opened up and have been too ambitious in trying to do everything well, virtual learning, hybrid learning, in-person learning, asynchronous learning, synchronous learning, trying to do it all, have somehow risked doing any of it well. But we're learning, and we're going to try again, as we said, to get to that happy medium, a place where parents could say, you know what, I'm going to judge them by their effort. They've really made great efforts, and they've stood there and they're there for my kids. And they've always been in that way, and they're going to continue to operate that way. The one piece that I recognize is, we have to be careful about cherry picking the information that we want to find. So I'll often hear from emails say, well, this district A, B, and C over there, they're doing this. Why can't we do that program? And then I talk to my colleagues in those districts and they say, it's interesting because I hear from parents who say, Penn Delco is doing this. Why can't we do what Penn Delco is doing? So my point is that I think every district is just trying to meet the needs of its constituents. And we are all still very much in the first month of this type of a school year where we're being asked to meet a lot of different needs, but we'll do our best. So when you're faced with that quandary, what do you do, right? Well, I personally go back to the 3 questions that I have pledged to the community that I would always ask on the website, right? My 3 questions when we face these quandaries are, is this best for our students? That's the primary question. So you might not get the teacher that you want, but if the instructional program is the best thing for students, I'm going to go with the instructional program if that's what's best for students. Is the practice educationally sound? So if we have learned things from other districts who have failed at certain efforts at hybrid learning, we're going to learn from that and we're going to capitalize on that and make an improvement. And then is it financially prudent and responsible? That's the other piece. There are limitations to the commitments that we can make, but we want to be competitive and we want to keep that number 1 question first. Is this best for our students? So we have been saying that, quotes like this are important to stay grounded. We can't tell you the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everyone. We go back to those questions up top. Is this best for our students? Is the practice educationally sound? And is what we're doing prudent and responsible? And we believe the hybrid program that we have in place right now that we're going to switch to meets those answers positively, and that the cyber option that we'll provide for parents meets those questions positively as well. So let's talk about 5 key misunderstandings that we have heard. Some of the principals have said, parents have legitimately asked because maybe our communication wasn't clear. Maybe we just didn't understand the perspective of a teacher. And I'm sorry, of a parent. And I would apologize if that was the case. So let's try to make it right and clarify some of the things, the misunderstandings that might be out there. The first key misunderstanding, elementary hybrid students will only receive 2 days of instruction a week. Okay, that is not accurate. Right? It's not accurate. It is true that elementary hybrid students will receive 2 days of in-person instruction. That's correct. So one cohort would be there Monday, Thursday, another one would be there Tuesday, Friday. But it is not true that that's the totality of their instruction. That is not true. So the clarification is this. The elementary hybrid students will receive instruction all 5 days. 2 in person, as we say. 1 where they'll sync in on a compressed schedule on Wednesdays, just like they are doing right now. 2 days of live sync for a morning meeting, math, and ELA. And then there's also independent asynchronous learning time built into that schedule as well. But the students who are in the elementary hybrid program will have access to their teacher 5 days a week, and they will have access to instruction 5 days a week. Now, the amount of time that's dedicated to that math and that ELA or the morning meeting for the at-home hybrid students could differ based on the lesson, based on the age group, based on where they are in the curriculum. No different than if they were in school. So in school, a teacher doesn't directly teach all day long. A teacher might assign a child to some independent time, some cooperative group work, some self-study, some whole group work, some small group work. And that's what we're trying to replicate in the hybrid model. In-person instruction, and then when they're at home, access to the teacher, some direct instruction, some small group, some independent work on their own. That's at the elementary level. And let me stick with that because the key questions are really at the elementary level. So if you look at this schedule here, let's say your name is Adams and you are coming in hybrid schedule. On Monday, you come to school. Great to have you here. Put on your mask, come here, and let's get you back to school. On Thursday, you're coming into school. There's 2 of the 5 days. On Wednesday, both cohorts are being taught by the teacher, right? The teacher's syncing up with you, just like she's doing right now, he or she's doing right now. And then on the other 2 days, there's a combination of synchronous work for ELA and for math, and then work on your own, asynchronous work. And then Wednesday afternoon, again, a lot of the time, we were very responsive to parents who said, this is way too much, right? We need a break. I can't be sitting next to my kid 5 days a week doing all this work. I have a job to do too. We get that. Wednesday gives us opportunities for related services, for learning on your own. Also gives our teachers time that they need to get better at doing this. This is an incredible ask of our staff to teach kids in front of them and teach kids at home. So they need time as well to gear up for this. So you'll see here for the hybrid, it's not true that you only get 2 days a week. You'll have opportunities 5 days a week because we don't want to create 2 classes of students, a cyber class and a hybrid class. They're going to be about equal when it's all said and done. Cyber. So if you chose the cyber option, right now, there's not a lot of, it's not an overwhelming amount of people that are looking for cyber option. The clear majority would like to go hybrid, but some have very good reason for saying, I want cyber. If you're doing cyber, right, you would have cyber teaching Monday, you would have cyber teaching on Thursday, you would have a mix on Wednesday, right, synchronous and asynchronous, and then you would have a mix on the other 2 days, right? So you won't have like a cyber teacher all 5 days, all the time, right? Because we know you have to have balanced, and a balanced approach is best for kids. So to that point, again, elementary hybrid students will get instruction. It's not like I'm going to get less, my kid's going to fall behind. We don't believe that to be the case. At the secondary level, remember, if you are a hybrid student, you're going in for 2 days and you're syncing in from at home. And if you're a cyber student, you're syncing in from at home. Next misunderstanding. When my child returns to school, he or she is going to have a different teacher, okay? We expect that when students come back to school, they're going to be assigned to the teacher that they currently have. So when I say expect, meaning, if a teacher suddenly had to go out on a leave or something like that, or if someone was out on child rearing leave, or we had to make mass accommodations to class sizes or something like that, there always could be a change like there would be on any normal year. But our plan, our basic expectation is that when kids come back from at-home learning and switch into hybrid, they're going to have the teacher that they have right now. That's the general expectation, unless there's these outlier, weird, odd situations. Third misunderstanding. Penn Delco cyber students get to keep the same teacher that they currently have. And this is one where the answer is, it depends. It depends. At the secondary level, cyber students have the same teacher. And they can do that because of their independence, because of their maturity, because of the nature of the instruction that happens at the secondary level. It's also a practical matter because we have so many secondary classes that have just a teacher with a singleton, for instance, like an AP physics class or an AP psychology class. We don't have like a whole department of teachers where we could say some of them do virtual and cyber and some of them do in person. That's not how it works at the secondary level. At the secondary level, almost very much like a college approach, right? Some people are in person, some people are at home. So you would have the same teacher. At the elementary level, cyber students will be assigned a new dedicated cyber teacher because that is what they deserve. And what we do not want to do is put cyber students in a situation where they have to pipe into the live stream, not get the attention that they deserve, for potentially a full year and not have that level of direct instruction that we want all of our kids to get at some point in time. So for instance, teaching a kindergarten class in person and also half the class at home, cyber, is a very, very challenging task. You could potentially have 12 kids in front of you to manage, to teach, and to actually implement all the new health and safety protocols. And at the same time, make sure that you are properly caring for and tending the 12 who are on the screen, who may not have the maturity to manage the screen, the time, their attention. So hybrid and virtual balance at the elementary is without a doubt, much more challenging than it is at the secondary. And we don't want to overcommit and underdeliver. So at the elementary level, you would have a new dedicated cyber teacher by grade. You will have potentially some of your own friends who may be in your grade at your school, but you will also get a chance to meet some new friends as well. And then of course you would remain as a registered child, registered student at your elementary school. So if you're a Penn child and you decide to go cyber, you're a Penn kid in a cyber program. It's just a different section, that's all, but you are a Penn kid. Fourth misunderstanding, Penn Delco cyber students will get more instruction than the hybrid students. That is not our plan, as I showed you the schedules. Our plan essentially is to make sure that kids in the hybrid program are moving and progressing and not falling behind, and kids in the cyber program are moving and progressing and not falling behind. And our plan is to make sure that neither group is overwhelmed with too much screen time and not enough independent choice activities. So hopefully the calendar and the schedule showed that piece. Again, we care for kids too, and we don't want to see that happen. We don't want parents to be in a position of saying, what's the very best plan I could pick for my child? We don't want your child to fall behind either. And you should understand that we're going to advocate for both groups equally. We think both groups will progress at a similar pace when all is said and done. Elementary cyber students will also have periods of asynchronous work assigned to them, just like hybrid. So if you talk to cyber schools in Pennsylvania, they will tell you, be aware. All cyber means a lot of parental support. And that's something that you have to balance. Whereas with the hybrid, you can send your kids to school, at least certainly for those 2 days at least, and they're not directly right on you and requiring the same kind of support. So hopefully that helps understand. Last one that came up a lot of questions about mask wearing. Students, misunderstanding is that you have an option. If you want to wear it, you wear it. If you don't want to wear it, you don't wear it. In every school building, every person, student or adult, is expected to wear a mask or face covering because we know they are the most effective ways to not get COVID-19. It's unequivocal. So are there avenues for us to address these really rare select situations where there may be medical documentation or a pre-existing disability that we would have to address? Yes, we would do that. There's a process for that. But by and large, this issue of do you get to wear a mask you have to wear a mask. That's our expectation. And in places where there's one less barrier, we will add an additional barrier. So teachers can wear masks, face shields, students can wear masks. We have all those things in place. And it's working in other districts that have opened, and it'll work in our district too. So I'm going to mention next steps right now, even though we are going to do our Q&A. But for those of you who say, okay, got my questions answered, thank you. You're going to go to Skyward to withdraw from a cyber selection that you may have made during the summer. So things have changed. Some parents are a little more comfortable now, right? As they've seen schools open and manage this. And they might say, okay, my kid really needs to go back to school. Maybe for my own sanity, I am sending my kid back to school 2 days a week. I got to get him out of here. And you want to withdraw, and you made that online cyber selection during the summer, go on to Skyward and make that selection. If you think you need to enroll, you'll be able to do that. You do nothing if you're satisfied with your choice. Remember, your default situation is the buses are coming. They're going to pick up your kids on the days that your kids go to school. We're going to bring them to school. They're going to have a great experience. They're going to bring them home just like a normal year. So keep an eye out for more communication over the next few days. We have heard some people say there's so much, I can't digest it all. That's why we're trying to do this at night for you to help. but recognize there is information that we have to just keep giving you for people who may have questions, right? So please keep an eye out for that. I'll be turning more and more of the communication over to your principals who are outstanding, and they can address, building specific issues better than I can at my level. I ask for your trust in our district and our staff. We really do care for your kids. We'll own up if things don't work. We'll make adjustments, and we'll improve. And stay positive, right? We continue to accomplish great things here in this district, and we're going to make that commitment. So the Q&A. So we've got questions in here. Here's the little rules. Type questions into the Q&A box. We have many already. Feel free to email principals or other school administrators. I will tell you, I just found some in my spam filter. Maybe tonight we'll answer those questions. I will get to your questions if not. Please keep tonight's questions to those broad, large topics. So things that are related maybe to your specific child's needs might be better directed to an administrator or a teacher. Keep in mind that there's a large audience here. And some questions we might not have an answer for. We'll try to get you an answer. We'll do a follow-up answer. So with that, let me drop out of here for a moment and bring in our panelists. And I will take a look at our Q&A. And I will read a question and I'll direct it over to one of our administrators. I'm also administrators going to assign some of you as co-hosts if you want to type in some answers so that you can answer live, so we can try to knock out as many questions as we can with the time that we have. Okay. Let me do that for just one moment. And while I'm setting that up, I'll let Mr. Kaminka share maybe a couple key points that I may have missed in my oration. Go ahead, Mr. Kaminka.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Stanoff. I just want to say, compliment, you already did compliment the staff, and I do want to compliment the administrators and the faculty and teachers. They are learning every single day and really have taken a collaborative approach. They've given great insight how to improve last spring. The summer came, we purchased a lot of resources to make this better and more improved. And I just can't say enough about our teachers' willingness to make this happen, and our administrators just wanting to make this successful for the kids. I have to say that, guys, I see teachers more and more, they want them back in person. These last 2 weeks have been challenging. It's been better than the spring, but it's also been, it's been coming with challenges, and they do want to have them back in person. So they're working really hard to make this successful for our hybrid students, and as also our cyber students as well. And they're willing to learn every single day.
Thanks. And also, Mr. Gorniak, maybe share a little bit of the focus that you've been working on with our staff in terms of some of the new technologies that we have in place to try to better improve asynchronous and synchronous learning. You've been doing a number of training on recent Wednesdays in that regard, and I'll read through some questions.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Steinman. Thank you, Mr. Kaminka. Our goal really is to not just buy any old tools, but tools that specifically meet our needs for Ready for Life. So we're focused on collaboration, 21st century skills, varied kind of assessments so that we can really see what students are learning versus just being able to answer a multiple choice. And I really got to commend the staff for not only diving in, some coming in over the summer, as Mr. Kaminka mentioned, and we've really dropped a ton of tools in their tool belt for them. And I think we're obviously for the better for it. So Nearpod, Edpuzzle was our latest addition, Discovery Ed, the Google tools, the Schoology tools, Flipgrid, among so many others, and Jamboard, and they're constantly emerging. So really, we have a lot of things in our arsenal to best meet the needs of students, and it's really that forward-thinking approach to meet the needs of 21st century learners. So that's continued to be our North Star, and we're working towards that. And despite the challenges of this year, when this is all said and done, we will have a tip-top, well-trained and tech-savvy staff, and we're already pretty close. So I'm getting thrilled each day as we make progress, and I could see the progress. It's dramatic. So
thanks, Ms. Gorniak. So a couple questions. Issues with link on the website takes you to Outlook. Yeah, we're aware of that. For some reason tonight, the immediate click didn't work. You have to cut and paste it, or actually use the meeting ID and the password. For secondary students, if we choose cyber, is our student guaranteed the same teachers or schedule? If you choose cyber, it just basically means your student follows the same schedule, but they're not coming in. So that would be correct on secondary. Could potentially be a couple different teacher changes here based to make sure that we can socially distance. But for the most part, yes, the advantage for secondary is we want kids to come into school a couple days a week. We think that's important social emotionally. We know kids have to get in. We know in-person instruction is better, particularly for some of the lab type activities and those type of things. But yes, so the idea is it's secondary, same teacher, same schedule for the most part. Are we going to share sample schedules in the email? Yeah, those schedules have been updated based on the one that was sent out, I guess, last Thursday. But Ms. Pomerini will update that. The only difference is that we just kind of clarified that there are times of synchronous instruction that will happen during the week. Some compliments to the staff. Crazy times. Are the bus schedules and bus stops the same? Yes. Okay, I'm sorry, that was answered as well. So let me go over to some other ones, some open ones. If a grade school teacher from your child applies for cyber positioning and gets the position, what happens? So good news is right now, we are going to be able to staff the cyber positions without having to use teachers who are already assigned to entire classes. So right now, that issue isn't a concern. If school goes back to 5 days, the kids go back to the original teachers' classes. Yes. So those classes that are set up right now are designed. What would we do if we opened up 5 days? They would all come in. So when school goes quote back to normal, that's correct. Kids are going to go back to these assignments that they have right now. I'm also hearing something is wrong with my camera. It's flashing. Is my camera causing some problems, Mr. Kameka?
No, it looks good.
Got it. All right. Will the elementary students from different cohorts be sharing desks? Are desks going to be clean each day? Will individual supplies be brought home each day so that students don't share them? Mr. Kameka.
Yeah, so actually I may have Mr. Dottie, he can actually describe how the desk's been set up, but they've been all set up to be 6 feet distancing. And in some cases we try to eliminate that, but if we had to do any desk sharing from one day to the next, we are doing extensive cleaning between.
Yeah, I can chime in there as well. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. In the elementaries, the cohorts are set up, A cohort, B cohort, so the desks are side by side. So they are the same student will continue with their same desk throughout the week. So this will actually give us time to disinfect between the first live day and the second live day for both the A cohort students and the B cohort students. Their desks and areas will be disinfected.
Thank you.
So, yep.
Thanks, Mr. Dottie. At the elementary level, if hybrid keeps their teachers, what teachers are left available to teach the cyber? So we have some internal teachers who are like specialist type area teachers, maybe like a reading specialist, for instance, who didn't have an assigned classroom, who have interest in teaching cyber. We also have interviewed for just dedicated cyber teacher positions, right? We also have kind of many of our qualified building substitute teachers who are also fully certified, fully trained in all of our programs. And if they've had an interest, we would hire them much like we would hire any other teacher. So we've gone through the same process. Our standards are going to be just as high, but we also have had interest from some teachers who actually taught virtual cyber school for several years. So they're really good, solid candidates. Will a cyber teacher be teaching multiple elementary grades at once? It's our goal to have one cyber teacher for one grade. There's a question about virtual learning. If it's mixed across the district and each school is not at the same level as the other, how are they going to get on the same page for a teacher when they come back? Mrs. Murray and the principals will be following along the progress to make sure that the cyber kids are not falling behind. For the most part, you could go from one school in Penn Delco to another in the same grade. You're generally going to come right back in the same neighborhood in terms of our curriculum. Teachers are generally following the kind of the same pace. It could be off by a couple of days, but I wouldn't be concerned if a student at Parkside, for instance, had a cyber teacher and then had to go back to Parkside, or a Pennell student had a cyber teacher and then had to go back to Pennell. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Any other clarity, Mrs. Murray, on that one, or any other item I missed so far?
No, I agree with that as well, Dr. Steinhoff. They will be in close proximity following our curriculum map. And again, like Dr. Steinhoff mentioned, at any point in time when we are in a brick and mortar setting, one third grade teacher may need to review a concept or elaborate on a concept. So they may be within a few days of one another, but generally they're pretty lockstep. So again, it might be something where I have to catch a child up on a lesson or two, or there might be some review, but generally they're going to be around the same pace.
Thanks, Ms. Murray. If a child has a sibling with a different last name, do they go by the younger sibling's last name? younger sibling in your family would be your cohort. We're not too concerned about like, it has to be this letter on this day. We're more concerned about is that the cohort doesn't change. So once you're in a cohort, that's the cohort you're going to stick with. I will say, however, that all school districts are starting to realize that outside of school, we have kids on soccer teams, we have kids on clubs. There's a lot of mixing of the cohorts that's happening on the other 18 hours of the day. But at least in school, we're going to make a commitment not to just let that go pell-mell, right? You're going to be in a cohort. Once principals have you in the cohort, that's the one you're going to be assigned to, and we'll stick with that, you know, as long as the hybrid goes on. Questions about the end of the marking periods and switching back from cyber. Okay, great question. Our elementary marking periods are different than our secondary. So secondary follows quarters and elementary follows trimesters. We think to be fair to our teachers, importantly, that give us a little notice, wait till the end of the marking period before suddenly you show up and you're back in the classroom. So at the secondary level, yes, it would be earlier. And at the elementary level, it's the end of a trimester, which is actually closer into December. If schools go back virtual, with the children that stick with virtual learning go back to elementary schools, they're going to go back to the elementary schools that they are in right now. Okay, so once virtual ends and we try to get back to normal, you would go back to your existing class, existing school, existing grade. Is the school district concerned with numbers rising from COVID in neighboring school districts? Yes, I'm always concerned. I will tell you, I talk to my colleagues twice a week on common Zoom calls. We also have the executive director from Chester County Health Department who talks to superintendents on a weekly basis. And we talk about those general trends as well as the doctors from Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. And we are keeping an eye on regional trends for sure. Right now, again, it's, you know, knock on wood, right? Much more positive than we expected. But yes, we do follow that and we keep that in mind. If so many kids go virtual, would there be an opportunity to send kids into school since spaces aren't taken up? I understand that question. So yes, if we had the space, right now our numbers are not showing that to be the case, right? So if we have like 22 second graders across the district who are doing virtual, that's not going to open up a lot of seats between 4 different schools. So we would look at that, but I really don't think that that's going to be the case. Like, I'm aware of a school district where a number of elementary parents just said, I think I'll just keep my kid home this year because, you know, I don't like the half day every other day or daycare problems and all this stuff. That opened up some spots for them to have more kids come in. We're not seeing that here in Penn Delco. We're seeing a lot of interest in the hybrid. So we think those seats are going to be taken up. Will students and teachers be required to wear masks? Yes, they will. We've been working with our staff on that. We know that it's just as important that if staff happen to get COVID, that they are not transmitting it to students. I walked around schools today, everyone's wearing a mask. Interest in detailed schedules for all grades. So 6 to 12, you're following the same schedule. Let Ms. Murray talk a little bit more about what the schedules might look like at elementary and, you know, why there's not a specific detail schedule, why it might not be 60 minutes, might be 48 minutes one day or something like that. Go ahead.
So for each elementary school, based on the master schedule, there's a lot of moving parts that are in play. For instance, the related art schedule when you know, the art teacher's teaching versus the gym teacher, et cetera, lunch, recess schedules. So every building within each grade level differs. So in order to provide that detailed schedule, once our teachers are given time to process what all of this looks like, and they're going to be giving time this week to do so, they will be pushing out what those specific schedules look like for that classroom for your child. So a 3rd grade schedule in one building is going to look different than a 3rd grade schedule in another. Right now, while we're all virtual, the schedules are consistent across the 4 buildings, but that changes when we are back into brick and mortar just because of the variables that come into play. So there is a master schedule for every building, for every grade level, and the teachers will be pushing out that information for each one of their classes for each one of those times. So in order for us to do that, we would be publishing, you know, the potential to have, you know, multiple schedules that would have to be posted publicly. And so the teachers will be pushing out that individual schedule in the same way that last year when I came to back to school night, the teacher put up my child's schedule up on there, and that 3rd grade schedule looked different than say another 3rd grade schedule in another building because the lunch times are different, the related arts times are different, et cetera. So that information will be specifically put out by the classroom teacher on the School as You Please.
Thank you. There's a question, why can special needs students attend 4 days a week? Aren't there concerns about risk? It has to do with class size, frankly, right? So we have some programs that may only have 3 or 4 students in the entire room. And that enables us to have those 3 or 4 students come in every day because they have complex needs. And one child is in a corner of a room and they're so socially distanced. So it really came down to sizing. It also had to do with the feedback from Chester County Health Department that told the district, we understand you have to balance health and safety also with needs for students who have complex learning needs, and they can't be met virtually. So the sooner we can safely have those students come back to school, the better. That was the reason for prioritizing their needs, because they had to be in school for us to better meet their needs. It just don't meet the needs virtually as well as other students. It really had to do with just size. So people appreciate the updated plan. Mr. Kaminka, how about kindergarten? Are AM and PM combined on Wednesday still? And since kindergarten is half days.
No, they actually have, they have 2 different times, and Ms. Murray, you can actually jump in on this to make sure I have this. So I'm going to let her do this because she does oversee the kindergarten teachers.
So again, we are working specifically with the kindergarten team, and because the parameters of their day are very different than the parameters of everyone else's day, they have 2.5 hours. Their schedule will look slightly different than our 1 to 5, when we are currently in the process of working through that. So right now, if you're a kindergarten parent, yes, the morning meeting includes everybody. So both cohorts come together. We will still have that in the morning meeting, but we will work that compressed time so that there is a dedicated AM time and there is a dedicated PM time within that compressed schedule.
Question about how many teachers took leaves because their children are still at home. Our staffing is very strong. I told our school board, I don't know how our staff have done it, but they have been phenomenal in managing their commitment to their job, plus their personal lives. I think we tried to give them as much advance notice as we possibly could. But our teachers have done a really, really exceptional job, and we're not facing the struggle to find teachers that some other districts have. So very, very minimal impact. Those who took the leave, if they have the right to it, we understand, but it's had very minimal leave, and we've been really happy. How long will the hybrid and full cyber program last until? We believe that we will continue cyber through the year, right? So Penn Delco, we wanted to offer that anyway for parents who said, even forget about COVID, my child learns better at home or in a cyber model. So instead of going to a Gore Cyber Charter School or Pennsylvania Leader Cyber Charter School, we want to provide that ourselves because we think we can do it well. So some parents, forget about COVID, we're interested in cyber learning. And that's the advantage here, right? So we can have that in place. So regardless of what happens, for that really, really small group that were going to do cyber anyway, we wanted to make sure we had that offering, okay? Why is it acceptable for students to sit 2 to a bus seat? We're following that. We'd have to go to the health department. So we asked the health department about this. This was the guidance that's been given to the state. Students will be spread out on the bus, so it'll lower the density. We are going to fill the bus by the first students who come on. They automatically go in the back, and that eliminates a lot of bodies going by one another. They're going to wear masks. We're going to ask that siblings sit with one another. Imagine that. Imagine a brother having to sit with a sister. But we're going to try to enforce that as well. So there's a lot of these transportation protocols. They were recommended by the health department, and we're following them. But we'll just spot that. The doctors and the experts have said, if you go 2 to the seat, that will be enough. At elementary, you expect the teachers to simultaneously teach virtual students as well as those in front of them at least some of the time. Yes, some of the time. All the time, it's too much to ask, frankly, right? But some of the time, so that they can make a connection with those students who are at home. And we recognize the ask that this is of teachers of elementary age to handle the kids in front of them and the kids at home. But the hybrid students who are home, we want them to be able to touch base, check in, get some instruction, not lose an entire day's worth of instruction because they're home on those days. And we're going to work with our staff. Our staff are at different levels. Some are like, oh, live stream all the time. And others are phenomenal teachers, but maybe that's not their skill set. So we need to be there to support them, and we have to have a measured approach. Let's start with a little. Do that well. And once we're confident, then we can grow the program from there. The hybrid schedule shown tonight, pretty much is the same. We'll update it though. We just added the fact that on those at-home days, there is some synchronous learning times on your at-home days. What will recess and lunch look like at the elementary level? Mr. Kaminka will take that. I'll scan through for a few more questions.
And that was elementary level for lunches?
Yes.
Yes, very similar to right now, except for we need to ensure that there is 6 feet distancing in the lunchroom so they can eat and take off their masks. And in essence, that will become a natural, organic mask break for the students. So that we had to create schedules that maybe spread out the kids a little bit more. But right now, all our elementary schools are able to utilize the cafeteria for lunch, and there will be recess as well. So it'll be very similar to what the kids have experienced prior.
Okay. Are face shields okay? According to the Chester County Health Department, the guidance is the following. Face shields alone is not enough. They want the mask. So we will not prevent a child, if a parent wants to send them in with a mask, as long as they have the face mask underneath as well. As I'm looking for mine and my pile of face masks that we have here. So they'll have to have a mask, but if they were to wear a face shield, they can. What teachers are finding, however, is that it's another layer. So in terms of audibility and volume, all those things, that's the balance I think our teachers are trying to work through, right? So we're trying to balance the safety with the fact that teachers have to wear the mask. Some may have a face shield on. Some may have some students at home learning, students in front of them. So we're trying to work through all that. But yes, they're okay, but you can't wear a face shield instead of a mask unless you had approval through the process. You have to talk to your principal about that. The teachers for cyber, some are our own, some are new hires, some are teachers that we had kind of on the bench ready to go, right? So we always have like, who would our next hire be? Really super qualified person, but we don't have an opening right now. So our principals, interview some of those people earlier in the process. And if we have these needs, we can go and talk to them and see if there's an interest in that regard. Lunch we mentioned. How will the schedule look for secondary students in terms of how long they're expected to stay on if they are at home or cyber? Mr. Kaminka.
All right, if you repeat that, Dr. Steinhoff, I was answering a question.
Yeah, kind of just what does a secondary schedule look like? Like if you're at home, how long do you have to be on the computer with the teacher?
Right now, we're looking at a minimum of anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes for a student to be live streaming, be ready to be live streaming on that. A teacher may want to stretch that out further depending on the assignment activities. But right now, the students should really plan to be live streaming, showing up on time for the first 10 to 20 minutes of every class period.
Okay. And we're trying to give the teachers, frankly, the autonomy and the professional decision to decide, sometimes as a teacher, like, okay, it's just that this lesson is done. So as you remember, when we were in school, they might say, okay, you can start on your homework for those last 3 minutes or whatever. We don't want to, why force kids to sit on a screen if they don't have to be on that screen? So that's why there's a little flexibility there. And we'll let our teachers make the right decisions on that. We really trust them to do the right thing. Information about bus schedules and numbers. Okay, so bus stops will be posted online. We always put the bus schedule online, and we'll have the principals also remind parents for how they can get that information for the bus schedule and their number. Make sure that that's out, particularly with K-2 coming up in just a week. So for K-2 parents, definitely keep an eye out for information from your principals over the next couple of days. That's for sure. Let me just look at lunch. We've talked about that. Bus schedules. Yes, we'll make sure again that the bus schedules are posted tomorrow. I believe they already are, but we'll make sure again it's a little easier to find. Why are ninth graders having an orientation on a different day? So Sun Valley has not had ninth graders previously come in for a special day. They accommodated them when they came in. So when they come in on the first day, they do a series of things to help them out in that regard. Mr. Sassy will be sending out communication to our parents as well of incoming ninth graders so that they'll understand like some of the things that they can expect for the first day. What things will be considered for a child to get sent to the nurse and then home? So basically our teachers have received a guide and information on like what look fors are, right? So there are symptoms of look fors. And if you hit any of those look fors, we don't take the chance. We would send them to the nurse. The nurse would make the decision. We know this is going to be tough this month because a lot of kids have allergies and that might look like a symptom, right? So basically there's these symptom look fors And when we see that, any staff member could ask the child to go to our nurse, and our nurses are the expert on this. And they would maintain communication with parents and also with the Chester County Health Department if for some reason, we found out that there was a positive case. How will students be socially distanced on the bus? So we showed a picture of this during the summertime, and I'm going to I know Mr. Kamik is trying to answer some questions directly by typing them in, but we have the bus seat during the summertime when we planned this out actually had tape markers on them. So it would just say, students can't sit here. You have to sit in the blue markers. So that's how we'll socially distance them. Remember that the buses are cut at least by 50%, but much more, because a lot of parents have said, you know what, even though my kid's always assigned to a bus, they don't take the bus. I drop them off on the way to work. Or this year I'm driving my kids. I'd rather just drop them off.
Yeah.
So we know the number is going to be even smaller for that regard. Individual classroom times and those type of things, we'll make sure that the principals send them out. They're the same schedule as they would have been in previous years. And I'm rushing through a few because I want to make sure that I get to all these questions. When will cyber teachers be announced? Right. So what we have to do is we have to allow a couple days to pass so we can get a better handle on how many people might really want cyber. And then we'll make that assignment. And then cyber teachers will reach out to the parents with an email doing introduction. How is asynchronous learning beneficial for kindergarten? It's not ideal, right? So we look at asynchronous learning as better than nothing. But we think for sure kindergarten students benefit the most from in-person instruction. But parents have said, I understand that my child can't be there for in-person instruction. What else you got for us? Like, what else can my kid work on? Or he's with their grandparents. What can the grandparents put them on a program? So that's what we're trying to do, is just give people more things to do. Will kids be expected to wear masks? Schools that are asking kids to wear masks all the time have found out they rise up to the challenge. They wear them. So we would recommend that you have your kids start wearing these for longer periods of time. And they will be able to take them off, obviously, when they eat, because we have kids separated by more than 6 feet, and we're permitted to do that. I'll look at a few more. Will the cyber teacher be one of the current teachers for the grade? Currently, it is not one of the current teachers in that grade. It is a teacher who taught, 2 of them actually, taught that grade previously, and we're now in specialist roles. If I choose cyber, will my students still keep learning? Is learning support teacher through Zoom? Really good question, Mr. Kamika. So for special education students with 504 plan, how will that impact them in hybrid?
In a hybrid, they're going to be receiving, in most cases, live synchronous instruction with their teacher. So that'll be based on the groups, and the teachers will have to set up those schedules for majority of our students, depending on the level of support. So they're going to still receive that support, whether they're in person or even virtual on the at-home days.
Okay. Will 6th graders go Thursday and Friday? So no, it'll be the AK on Thursday, and it would be the L to Z's on Friday. So the 6th graders will have that one day. That also enables our middle school, right, to go through a practice run of that. Very good question. Once we start hybrid, it's the hybrid until we make another change. So we wouldn't be back to back to it. So it would be AK Monday, Thursdays, Tuesday, Fridays, L to Z. How will cyber students receive specialist instruction? A lot of our specialist instruction will be asynchronous, so that content material will move over to cyber students as well. Just looking at a few more questions while Mr. Kameka types a few away. I think we've had some of these. If a child has cold symptoms and they need to stay home, can they log into the classroom via Zoom to avoid having too many answers? Absences. Yes, we would encourage that. There's no badge of honor for perfect attendance this year at all. So if you have any reason to believe that your child needs to stay home, communicate that to the school, communicate that to the nurse, and we would appreciate that advanced notice. When seated 6 feet apart, can students get a chance to remove masks? So let me just see. I froze up there. There we go. The guidance has changed. So the guidance that districts have been given is that they should wear the masks, even if they're 6 feet apart. And I believe, my understanding is other schools have shown that you forget that, right? Once you take the mask off, just kind of forget that it's off and you walk around or something like that. So Schools have been told, even though you're separated, just get in the habit of wearing the mask, okay? Some questions on school bucks and the balance rolling over. Nobody should be losing money. I would ask you to contact Mr. Eric Zebley, our business manager, please. What happens on snow day? All right, so great question. Right now, we have days built in that are for inclement weather days, right? And remember that a snow day could mean that kids are in a hybrid, and I can't have teachers coming in, right? So down the line, could there be less snow days because we have the virtual ability? That would be the case for all school districts. I personally think that every kid and adult should enjoy a snow day every now and then, right? So I don't see a problem in there being a snow day every so often. But I think what virtual learning does for us is keep us from having to make up a week's worth of snow days during the summertime, right? At the moment, we don't have any plan for snow day number 1 to be all virtual. We want kids to play in snow a little bit. We want those older kids to help people and shovel snow. What if your child or staff is sick? What if they find out? Any questions about COVID-19 school nurse? Any questions about COVID-19 school nurse? Have there been changes to bus schedules? So we haven't changed the bus schedule. So if you're scheduled to get a bus on as if you were getting a certain time, a certain date, 5 days a week, that's when we expect that bus to come in. There'll be a material swap for students electing to stay virtual. Kind of material swap, I'll let the principals address that one. If a student tests positive, does a teacher quarantine? How about classmates? So any of the questions about positivity and who may have the virus, I will tell you, I got tired of hearing the answer, but it depends. We do the first thing we do. We take the facts and we send it to the Chester County Health Department. And we have a direct connection with the Chester County Health Department. They tell us what to do as the experts. They tell us who has to quarantine, who has to be out for how many days, what the next step should be. And we communicate that to the school community in accordance with their direction. So they take that one off of our desk altogether. The nurse takes the facts, it's the Chester County Health Department, tells the school district who should be quarantined, who needs to stay out, and who may be impacted by it. Students with IEPs and 504s will be supported. I'm still just trying to look through a few things. Let me try to see if there's some trends in these questions, and I'll let Dr. Thomas maybe just kind of generally talk about some of the things that you've been trying to address on your end, as a director of technology with the Chromebooks, maybe some of the general questions that you may be getting about technology. Go ahead, Dr. Thomas.
Sure. Some of the issues that we've kind of seen through some of the tickets that have come in have been a lot of general Zoom issues, latency issues, possibly with Wi-Fi or with Zoom itself. So we've tried to address some of that with some of the settings that Mr. Gorniak has kind of pushed out to some of our teachers. Things that we can check about the audio settings and the video settings in Zoom. We've also kind of recommended that, if a Zoom session is causing issues, possibly we try Google Meet. We're new to the Chromebook Zoom kind of whole setting setup. So, this is the first time that we've tried to do anything like this on this type of scale. So obviously there were some issues, not as many as we anticipated, but we're trying to address them kind of as we go.
Thank you. Some questions, middle school and high school level, how does a teacher do both? How do they teach the kids at home and teach the kids in front of them? As I mentioned, extremely difficult ask. But they're doing it, right? So teachers across the country are rising to the challenge. And I'm not going to say it's easy, because I know some really gifted superstar teachers in my home state of Delaware, right across the line, that have been doing this in some private schools that opened up from day one. And they tell you they are exhausted, but they care for kids and they're trying to make it work. And some of the problems in the first week are gone, but they know that it's really, really difficult, right? You're asking a teacher to do two things at one time. The older the student, the easier it is to do. And we're seeing it being done effectively at the secondary level because of the independence and because of the maturity of the students and because of the nature of the kind of learning that can take place in that regard.
Yeah,
Still have,
I'll jump in on that one, Dr. Steinhoff.
yeah, please, Mr. Kamica.
And I agree with you 100%. It's going to be a challenge. It has not been done before. It will be absolutely new. And a lot of our teachers are definitely, all our teachers are really just up for the challenge. But we're running through some training videos actually as we speak. Mr. Gorniak has spearheaded that one for us. And we'll be showing how we are able, with the technology that we have, project things right on the board using our laptop computer. So you can actually project what on the boards this way. Not only the students on camera who are on Zoom can see what is being projected because they'll be able to see that projection with a shared screen, but also the kids in the actual at-home classroom will see it because it's being projected up on the board. So we definitely have some technology capabilities. It will be difficult to manage, but that is something that, we're up for that challenge to try.
Couple questions about how it'll appear. I can tell you it's more likely that once we're at hybrid, you'll be seeing the teacher, not necessarily all the faces of a classroom, right? Just because of the nature of the video setup. The district has purchased some high-end cameras to really help with the quality of the instructional delivery. What if there's too many children in a classroom on a hybrid day? The principals have looked at the rosters based on letters and feel comfortable that won't happen. They have a backup plan if at any given time they thought that the density was too high. How will hallways be monitored before classes? Kids will be taught what they're expected to do. I know they have principals have worked on direction with Mr. Dottie. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit in terms of walking through the hallways and signage and those type of things.
Yes, there's actually some schools are set up a little bit differently, but especially in the middle and high school, we're dividing hallways. There's actually floor tape and directional signs that are down, also wall signs that will, again, direct students on which way to walk. Basically, we're staying to the right sides of the hallways as they walk. Some stairwells will be designated up, some will be designated down, again, trying to keep traffic flow in the one direction there.
Okay. Mr. Gorniak, maybe talk about how teachers can deal with the volume issues if they're working with kids in the classroom and they have kids at home. Some of the things that we're trying to work through.
Sure.
I mean, fortunately, we're not the only district in the country trying to figure that one out. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Steinhoff. So the first recommendation I can make to everybody, if you haven't picked one up, is a headset like this. They look awesome, but more importantly, you have this microphone, and this is really going to alleviate a ton of the problems. It's much more challenging when we're relying on the internal microphone of a Chromebook to pick up the sound. And the biggest complaint that I hear is they can hear the teacher, but the teacher can't hear the student. So I pushed out a video to all teachers. We did training K through 12 on how to guide students to adjust the internal mic on their Chromebook. So teachers should be aware of that if you have that internal mic issue, but really by and large, this is the best way to mitigate most of the audio issues. And that's the most common complaint with Zoom. So we can't change your Wi-Fi at home, but the simple purchase of a $5 or $10 headset, if you don't already have one, the simple Apple iPod headphones, not the wireless ones, the regular ones, will do the trick as well. So it doesn't cost a lot, but it will make a substantial difference. And that's my primary recommendation.
Okay. I see some more requests for some sample schedules. We'll look at that, particularly at the kindergarten level. Maybe Danny Merritt can answer that one question that I just see came in at 7:05, so we're behind. What happens to secondary kids if we go back to full-time in-school learning? Will there still be a cyber option? We're going to continue the cyber option, but we will not be able to, as the high school, for instance, to be able to guarantee that you would continue to have your teacher. So it will go back to more like Penn Delco cyber that we had previously. Like for instance, if the teacher has 28 students in their classroom and that one student wants to stay home with cyber, there might be a more limited course offering at that time. Secondary teachers check their Zoom chats to answer questions throughout their classes. We will pass that feedback back on. If more students show up to class and can safely socially distance, what happens? Again, we don't think that'll happen. We have common areas dedicated though for overflow. So we think that that's an issue that we will be able to avoid. How do you opt out of transportation? That information will be sent out this week, and you can fill out the form and let us know, and that'll help us make sure that our buses are not too dense. We were shown a picture of a classroom. The seating was not 6 feet apart. I don't know what classroom it was. You may have seen the picture of the before and the after. Mr. Dottie has measured every classroom. The other piece I'll say about the desks is the 6 feet issue is the ideal. If you're 5 feet 10 inches, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily now like egregiously more at risk. So it was important for me to hear from the doctor at CHOP, which said that helps, right? It helps to have people socially distanced. But remember that when all students are wearing a mask, right, for the respiratory drops to transmit, if people are 6 feet away or you got 2 masks, you've really done all you could do. But we have a high level of confidence that we're actually going to be able to meet that target. In the summer, it was implied students be able to remove their mask. That guidance changed, following the most up-to-date, most recent guidance about mask wearing. They want us to wear the masks. What if there's not enough cyber students in a grade to have a teacher? Yeah, that is a possibility that we've examined, but we're going to use some CARES grant funding to ensure that we have a cyber teacher at every grade level for every kid. So we know that a couple of the grades it's really small cyber interest, but we're making that commitment, and we don't want to go backwards on doing that. Can we find out who the virtual teacher is before making a choice of hybrid or virtual? It's kind of very similar to enrolling in school. You enroll, we give you a teacher. We don't have anything transparent yet. We're still working that information out. They would not be, again, any of our existing teachers at a specific school, at a specific grade level, right? We have a group of teachers coming in, but they certainly would reach out, and we think that we're not hiring anybody, but anybody who is of high qualifications to fulfill that role. What would a drop-off be like for kindergarten? Principals will send out that information. They've gone through with Mr. Kaminka and Ms. Murray all the protocols the entire day. Gosh, they spent about 4 hours today talking through hybrid and all the implications for next week. Will kids change classes or will teachers change? Kids will change classes. Okay, so kids will change classes. We won't be able to send, because it's just so complex. The high schools have kids changing classes. We know they'll wear the masks. We know they'll follow the protocols, and our staff will step up and do what they need to do. What is a cohort, right? A cohort is a group. So when we say a cohort, A means in this district, if your last name generally begins A through K as first letter, last name, you're in cohort A. Cohort B would be everybody else. And it's just a term that we use to say you go to school on these days. And the advantage is that if someone would happen to have COVID-19, it only would potentially affect the people who actually were in that cohort, okay? And I know some of my co-hosts are answering some questions, they're typing them in there. Some more questions about, cleaning, those type of things. Brian, maybe one more time, anything else that we've missed, the electrostatic sprayers that we're using and, all those different type of things that we have in place.
Yeah, sure. Again, we're dealing with that really 2 separate groups. So you've got the elementary where, again, the desks are set up side by side, but then spaced. A cohort is spaced 6 feet apart from from the A cohort desks, and B likewise. So again, there we can clean, we can fully disinfect between the Mondays and Thursdays and the Tuesdays and Fridays. Now in the high school and middle school, because of the class changes, we've provided actually all the teachers, even in the elementaries, cleaning and disinfecting supplies. So because of the brief, and I've answered a lot of these same questions, because of the brief changeover with classes, the teachers, where possible, are going to disinfect the desk and chair for the students. So we just it's virtually impossible to try to get somebody out and around to clean in between. But and in the evenings and on Wednesdays, that's when we're going to really concentrate with these electrostatic applicators that will do a very thorough disinfecting job, and actually we'll be able to cover more ground with those. So every building has one right now. We're actually going to have 2 in each of the buildings when we get this back order in. And again, that will help immensely with the disinfection.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about whether or not we're taking temperatures of students when they come into school. And we are not. That is guidance that came out of one of the expert testimonies from Children's Hospital. One of the points they made is that they were doing temperature checks even at the hospital itself, and then never finding it as a way to identify somebody who actually has COVID would have led to a proactive step. So I'm aware that that's still happening if you go to some doctor's offices and things like that. But the potential logjam in the logistical queue that would create of kids that are waiting to get the temperature taken, potentially in a way that wouldn't even tell us. So they could potentially have COVID and still not have a temperature, is what has changed the guidance in that regard. So the health experts are now saying, don't have kids lined up where they'll be closer to one another, potentially, expose one another if they have it, because it's a measure that doesn't necessarily help us keep students out who might have it. It's more important to do the symptom checks. So that's changed a little bit since our discussions last June and July. Lunches at the secondary level, we're going to limit them. We may have students taking lunches in different locations. So some students may have to go to another room. We've looked at other common areas, but they've also, like for instance, at the high school, even at the middle school, they've shifted the lunches around so that we could de-densify the lunches. Really challenged because our tables were circular, and even if you had two kids at the table, they would still be within that 6 feet distance. So we had to completely redo that. We have a lot of confidence really in that process. Don't know if it's going to be a great experience for the kids because they're used to sitting with a group of friends and laughing and joking and all that fun stuff that you do. Now they don't have to be separate. So I mean, more like a quiet time to eat your lunch, catch up on some work, those type of things, talk to some friends. But it's not ideal. We're going to make the best out of it. How will staff monitor? Yeah, our staff will monitor kids as they travel through the building in the same way that we already do. When they see things that aren't safe, they intervene and they address it. They teach kids what our expectations are. And now there's just some more things to look for in terms of safety. But keep in mind, on any given day, the population of the school is potentially cut down by 50%. So the amount of students that have to be supervised is going to be smaller, at least during hybrid. There is recess for elementary, a lot of questions about that. Questions about the process for kindergarten parents. I saw a few of them. We'll make sure that your principals get that information to you so we understand it's still like the first day coming in for kindergarten, first day for first graders. Mr. Kaminka will work with our principals to make sure that that information is there. Music classes have started virtually. Is that what we're going to do? Yes, it is. So we didn't want kids to lose the ability to take lessons. So we will continue music lessons using the virtual program that we purchased. Why isn't Penn Delco Online Academy available for K2? So now that's a good question. So that question is, we have a program for totally asynchronous instruction. Totally. That means that you are not assigned direct instruction from a teacher. There's unique circumstances when parents may need that. And I will let Mr. Kaminka answer that question and talk about the difference.
Sure. So we do have a cyber academy that is available that is primarily asynchronous. It does have teacher support by a third-party vendor. We're utilizing EduSeer. That is a program that will offer for our elementary and some secondary students, but also we have Apex, third-party vendor. They at the secondary level, they all have their certified teacher that would be in place, would be a point of contact to be responsible for monitoring the students on that synchronous content, be a person for them to reach out to for support on that asynchronous content. So that is one big difference here is that for us now in the virtual, if you're in a hybrid model or even in the full cyber model with our own teachers, that looks very different. That'll be much more in line with our curriculum. That will be lock and step if we are able to go back to a full in-person instruction 5 days a week with everybody. And the parent wanted to make that shift from that cyber to a in-person instruction, the curriculum be much more aligned. So if a parent is going into that academy, that cyber academy, the PDSD online cyber academy, and prefers the asynchronous, that curriculum is not necessarily in alignment, although it is the curriculum that is required by Pennsylvania State of Education. It is what kids would learn throughout the year, just not in the same lock and step as we'd be doing here with Penn Delco teachers. I hope that answers that question. I don't know if Mr. Gorniak wants to add anything there.
I think the focus may have been, is it restricted to K2 students? And I know that content is available to first and second grade students. I think if we had to, it wouldn't be ideal, but we could try to modify that curriculum for a K student. So I believe that it is available, but again, this would be under a very specific circumstance. And I would encourage you to reach out to your principal or myself, and then we can kind of talk through what that is and just the requirements and challenges that would present, because it will be parent heavy in that it's all asynchronous. So you would have to support your child each day.
Yeah, I would echo that. Definitely reach out. We can really talk about the specifics of what that program looks like for a first grader.
Okay. Clarification on whether elementary students will be using Chromebooks. That's another question that came up. So one of the questions was, I see we froze up here for a moment. There we go. Thank you. We're back. Send your child's Chromebook into school with them. Send them in. So
Yes.
the Chromebook comes with just like a textbook, just like a critical notebook. The kid's Chromebook needs to go with them back and forth. And let's see. I know we're starting to wrap up. We've gone a little bit past time. I'm going to try and answer as many questions as I can. Normally, students receive small group instruction, such as guided reading groups. So how will this look in the classroom when kids are in school? Miss Murray, great question.
All right, can you repeat that? I was typing.
Yeah, no problem. How does small group instruction look in a hybrid model now, given the social distancing and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. So in a traditional brick and mortar, typically small group happens at what we consider to be a kidney-shaped table. So we know that we're not allowed to do that. So, we're still going to provide that small group individualized instruction. However, it's just the parameters of the space is going to look different. So that small group is going to occur while the students are at their desks. And obviously the teacher is going to be focused on those kids in that, that particular area. For the kids that are at home during those at-home learning days, or not at school per se, there will be opportunities for them to be able to Zoom in with the teacher for small group instruction as well. So very similar to kind of what's happening currently in our current state with the virtual learning. So the small group instruction will be targeted, but it will just be done at the student's desk, spaced 6 feet apart, but kind of grouped together. So we're just going to be very in particular about where the students are seated once they are in our brick and mortar situation.
Okay. I see a lot of questions, folks saying that secondary questions aren't being answered. Now, keep in mind, I'm looking at 327 open questions. So we're trying to get through as many as possible. And we did focus on the elementary because that's where it is a little different. But let me let Mr. Kamenka or Mr. Gorniak just generally talk about what the secondary hybrid program would look like to try to address some of these themes. I don't want secondary parents to feel we disregarded them. They're welcome to email Mr. Sassy, Mr. Lucius, any of us here tonight as well, and we'll try to get back to you over the next day or two. But anyway, anything else? There's some questions about crowds, overflow, what those kind of things. Well, that's secondary level.
Sure. Yeah. So when you talk to the admin and the teachers at the secondary level, it's going to look very similar to what the students are experiencing today, except for on their cohort day, they're going to actually be expected to be in person. We were actually just talking about how we're going to track that attendance, so that the teacher will be expected to track attendance when they're in person as as present. But if they're learning from remote, they will also be tracked for attendance. So they are to be there, as I had mentioned earlier, minimum of 10 to 20. In some cases, that professional judgment teacher may have them on longer, or he or she may send them on their way to complete the learned activity for the day. So they can experience a very similar schedule than what they are experiencing today. No real changes, and their start time is the same, their end time is the same. So it's going to look very similar to what what they're experiencing right now.
Yeah, I would just echo what Mr. Kamenka said. It's largely going to be what you're experiencing now, except some students are going to come to class, which is going to be a welcome change for a lot of people. But the reason we haven't spent too much time on it is because it is so similar. Teachers won't change and schedules won't change.
Okay. I see someone saying a snow day is totally needed by all occasionally. We have a lot of hardworking staff right now and parents at home supporting the kids who would love to get a snow day, I'm sure, right now, but we're a couple months away from that, I think. Logistics and all that stuff, again, that information will come out. Question about the specific medical needs of kids with asthma and wearing of the mask. Please drive that question to your school nurse, and we will work with that student on that issue. IEPs, 504s, we talked about that. Your teachers are still going to continue to work with the kids. Notification on what's if they're positive cases, what happens, will we move to virtual? So generally, let's talk about the fact this is uncharted time. But again, if there's a case in the school, it'll be reported to our nurse. The nurse contacts Chester County Health Department. They tell us what's next. We have cleaning protocols that immediately would be implemented in any of those particularly affected spaces. We would notify parents, staff, people that need to be notified about the presence of that happening. Question is, what if the whole class had to be quarantined? Could the whole class learn virtually? Well, in theory, that would make sense, right? The teacher might have to be quarantined too for 14 days. So that would be immediately something that we would look at as an option to make sure that an entire class doesn't fall behind for 14 straight days. And they're the kind of things that, we're going to pivot, we're going to respond to them, make some game day decisions when those things happen. I could tell you this, game day decisions, I would not have decided to punt. I would have gone for the field goal and got the win against Cincinnati Bengals. So hopefully we'll make better game day decisions when that comes. Yes, bring your supplies to school. I think that's about it. I mean, there's so many questions. I know we don't have time, but we will look at all these questions. We have a record of them, try to put out some Q&As, try to clarify with principals as well. Let me just go around and see if there's something that I missed based on the themes of the questions. I guess we'll start with Dr. Thomas.
I was just going to jump on one. I was just looking.
Oh, go ahead. We'll start with the assistant superintendent. We'll circle back to him. Okay.
I just want to answer this one because I was just, it was a secondary question. Yeah, it was a secondary question. I was just about ready to answer, and I just wanted to hit it. The secondary, because we know that we're going to be doing a significant amount of time more live streaming, that we did increase some cameras, some technology infrastructure. So we have higher resolution cameras coming in. We're working with teachers to also use headphones with microphone capabilities to help with audio. We're aware of this audio issue. The audio is an issue right now in a virtual atmosphere. We're going to be closely monitoring it and trying to work on that issue, so it's not a problem. But we are testing things right now where kids can, even though the teacher is wearing a mask, is able to hear as I'm talking to you right now. Through Zoom, but at home, but also the kids in front of them too. So that is something that is going to does make it a challenge in this hybrid, but it's also limiting right now in a virtual. We're dealing with that as well in the virtual. So I just want to answer that one because I saw that first. But go ahead. Was it Dr. Thomas you had speaking next?
Yeah, I was just, thanks. I was just seeing a lot of questions about attendance and about things like, if my child has symptoms, or if we need to quarantine, or we're supposed to be in person, but we can't make it in that day. It is completely acceptable to Zoom in that day. The teachers will be taking attendance to make sure that they keep track of the students that are in front of them, but also the students that are online and remotely present. So we're trying to meet everybody where we need to. So if you have a symptom, you have an issue, you can't make it in that day, obviously we'd like you to come to school when you can come to school. It's acceptable to Zoom in, meet up with the teacher, and attend that way. There was quite a few questions in there about that type of attendance. Obviously we want the people and the students to kind of maintain our the schedule, but it is acceptable to Zoom in and do that.
Mr. Kamenko, I'll let you wrap some things up here. I'll answer some questions and then we'll tie it all up.
Sure, and I think the biggest, I keep seeing a lot of questions around lunch as well. So I will add in there that lunch is at the secondary level. We are spreading kids out. We do have a minimum number of kids that we can fit. Mr. Dottie's done a great job measuring 6 feet distancing, so we know that exact number. Kids will be eating at desks, as you heard. We talked a little bit about that, but in some case, secondary will be utilizing some classrooms as well as the gym. And again, elementary is going to be primarily in the cafeteria. But I have to give again this admin group a lot of credit for all the work they're doing, and we're going to continue that work moving forward to make this work. These are things we're going to be trying in every week, we're going to be monitoring that, and we're going to be looking to improve that. But I think we have a really good plan when it comes to the hybrid, to do it safely. I think that's what comes first. That is our first focus, and then obviously want the instructional experience to be as close as possible to what they're definitely experiencing now, but more likely what it's going to look on in-person days. We really want to capitalize that program, so we want to make sure that both win, as best we can. We don't want to hurt the students at home and in schools. We want to make sure that we're trying to increase that education for both groups. Principals are going to be communicating a lot of information this week. Arrival dismissal seemed to be a hot button. I saw a lot of questions come through tonight on that. I try to answer some of them, but principals will be communicating that. We have targeted 6th grade orientation days, obviously, on those dates, but we also have 9th grade orientation information that Principal Sassy will be pushing out for those students as well. Let me think a couple other things that are popping up here. Today's Child is another one that they will be in our 3 elementary schools as they have in the past. There are restrictions. They have to meet the 6 feet distancing requirements as well. So during the day they are limited, but they could have some more capabilities for extended day due to they can use our lunchrooms and cafeterias. So we're in communication with them. They will have the same employee training as our own teachers have in our district. So they will have that information. So that service will be available for them as well. And that's all I have right now. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything else. Dr. Son, if you want to, maybe Ms. Murray at the elementary level specifically, we're talking every single day, multiple hours of meetings, trying to do what's best for our elementary kids. But anything you want to add?
First and foremost, I just want to give a huge shout out to the teachers, particularly at the elementary level that I am working with, excuse me. This is uncharted territory. I'm asking teachers to do something that has never been done before. And we want to make sure that we are doing it in a smart and measured way. And we want to do what's best and right for our students, but we also want to make sure that our teachers are supported with what they need. So, we're going to continue to grow those opportunities. And like Dr. Steinhoff had mentioned in the beginning, if we find out that something doesn't work, we will change directions and we will shift and we will find the things that work. Any of your questions specifically at elementary that weren't answered, you can certainly email the principals. You can certainly email myself at dmerry@pdsd.org. I am happy to answer any and all questions, particular to the elementary level. Trust us, we love your kids and we will do what's best and right by them. We want nothing more than to have them back with us. And we're faced with some insurmountable parameters, and we'll make do and we will make it amazing. And we will welcome your students back. Concerns about it's my first grader, the first time that he's on the bus. When they come in on that first day, it's going to be the Super Bowl. Like, we are so super excited. It was that way with our, students that arrived today, and it will continue to be that way on Monday and on the subsequent days. So trust us and know that we have an amazing team in place that is going to do truly phenomenal things. So thank you for your patience, and most definitely thank you for your support.
Danny, great summary. I did see another question coming in. Folks saying it was their understanding that non-school days would be more asynchronous, with the concern that kids have to log on. Most of the feedback we got was that the non-school days didn't include enough synchronous opportunities. So we think there'll be balance. We would say whoever the caretaker is for the child, have them sink in, try. We totally understand. I hope all parents will remember that too. We're parents as well. And we understand the challenges. We understand that your job is not to be parent 100% of the time and teacher 100% of the time. And many of you feel that way because this model asks you to be so. Give yourself a pat on the back. Understand, as Ms. Murray said, that we're here to work with you. We get it. And also, I would just wrap up with this. I hear from parents saying they're afraid that their kids are losing skills. They're going to be falling behind. They're not going to be ready when they're older. On some levels, Some students for some type of skills, which are generally school-based skills, might be a little bit behind. But think about things that kids are learning in this experience that they would have never had before. I mean, for us, we see 6, 7-year-old kids learning virtually on a Zoom. We see young kids uploading materials. We see secondary kids collaborating in small breakout rooms and behaving and doing the right thing. You know, when you look at communication, collaboration, critical thinking, character is a huge one. All the C's that we try to develop, because that's what employers and colleges want. This experience, really tough on us mentally, very stressful, but it's also enabling us to build a different set of skills, right? You grow when you face challenges, and kids who are facing challenges are going to express frustration. It's hard for us as parents, but remember that they're growing. That's the process, right? You know, you fall off the bike a few times, then you learn how to ride the bike, but it hurts when you fall off the bike. And some kids are feeling the hurt of this model not working for them at all, but they're getting better at it. And I would also finally summarize with Ms. Murray's point about, you know, our staff. Please have patience and understanding of what our staff are going through. They are doing so much to learn this model, to support, and they have families of their own too. You know, they have kids of their own that they love and they have to manage and take care of as well. So they're really trying their best. But thank you all. We'll look at the questions that came in tonight. We'll see if there's ways that we can answer them. I would again recommend that you contact building principals, email any of us, give us a little time to go through some emails, and don't stress too much over the right decision. It'll all work out. Thank you, everybody. Stay Penn Delco proud. And I want to thank our panelists, Danielle, Mr. Gorniak, Dr. Thomas, Mr. Dottie, and Mr. Kameka. Appreciate your time tonight. Have a good evening.
You're welcome. Have a good night.